much. It's time to talk about Russia and Ukraine, a subject that I've never really talked about on my show. Once or twice, but I never went deep into that subject. The reason I'm going to do it tonight, oh, and by the way, if you go and book an appointment at buybuywalmart.com or godsmoney.info for the gold and silver, or if you go to the organic store and buy anything as a wholesale member, then shoot me an email, brothervon@gmail.com. Let me know you did it, and I'll send that right out to you. We have a problem in Russia that you need to be paying attention to. I want to show you the problem in case you've not kept up with the news. Of course you haven't. That's my job to do that. But we do have a major problem. I thought I had that pulled up. Give me 1 second. And here it is on your screen. What you're looking at is a submarine communication. That communication is at the very bottom of the sea between Finland and Germany. The problem with that cable, it has been cut. Now, the reason for that is being investigated. Finnish state-owned data service provider by the name of Undersea said that it could only be human activity. He said breaks without external impact do not happen in these waters. Now remember, Finland joined NATO last year, infuriating Moscow and leaving Finland fearful of Russia. That happened yesterday. That's no small thing. That cable being destroyed is intentional because it causes serious disruptions to their communications. Now, right now, there is a network on the bottom of our oceans of underwater cables. There's over 400 of them. These cables that transmit 99% of all international data. Damage to just a few of these cables would seriously disrupt the internet as we know it. Now, Russia and China understand how dependent Western nations are on this technology. And they appear to be increasingly targeting these cables. Now, America is the greatest superpower this world has ever known, but we do have a very vulnerable Achilles heel in our military. This is our vulnerability, is these cables running under the ocean, and it could trigger the greatest shock in the history of warfare. Computer dependence is the Western world's Achilles heel, and within a few years, this weakness could be tested. Tension between Russia and the United States is rising. I want to take you back to September, just a few months ago. Russia made an announcement, September, October, so basically almost 3 months ago. They made an announcement that they intended to update their nuclear doctrine. I want to read that update to you. Aggression against Russia by any non-nuclear state, which, by the way, Ukraine is non-nuclear. So we know who they're talking about. But with the participation or support of a nuclear state is treated as a joint attack on the Russian Federation. I'd like to break that down for you. May I? Okay. Now, doesn't matter if you don't have nuclear weapons. If one of your allies has them and you attack Russia, a nation that doesn't have them, now you will be treated like you have nuclear weapons. Ladies and gentlemen, that is jolting. That is criminal to treat a non-nuclear state as a nuclear state. Well, yesterday, November the 18th, Russia approved formally that doctrine. This means that if Ukraine strikes Russia with a U.S.-made weapon, I want you to hear the depth of this. And by the way, the Biden administration just approved U.S. weapons to go to the Ukraine. Now, Russia says if one of those U.S. weapons strikes Russia through the use of the Ukrainian army, then now Russia is threatening nuclear war not against Ukraine only, but also the United States of America. And now, days ago, Hezbollah was been caught with a large number of Russian weapons. And this has led to great fear within our government that we could be on the brink of a nuclear war. Now, Donald Trump showed us in his first term that if you stand up to bullies, more often than not, they back down. But the Bible does warn us that there will be a third nuclear war just before the coming of the Lord. Now, many of you have been taught, well, I won't get into that tonight. Many of us in America are way too casual about world-ending weapons that nations have. Do you understand, my friend? Do you ever comprehend that one day the Bible promises you that one day someone will push that button? Now, I did a timeline to my church a few weeks ago showing them the real year on God's calendar, showing us with about a 30-year period before we start the 7th millennium, or the 7,000th year. Now, preceding that, we are promised in Matthew 24 that there would be a destruction such as the world has never seen, nor would they ever see it again. And that would precipitate the coming of Yeshua the Messiah to set up his kingdom here on earth. But you can relax. That nuclear war will not start with Russia or the Ukraine. So go ahead, take a breath. Don't let them scare you. This nuclear war will not start with Russia and the United States or Ukraine. I'm going to teach you tonight where this nuclear war is going to start. Before I do that, I want to talk to you about Ukraine and Russia. I know many of you watching me tonight, you think you know all there is to know. You've made up your mind who you support, who you don't support. Please take those thoughts, surrender them for a moment, and let me tell you the whole truth, nothing but the truth, ones that you can look up for yourself and find out that they are truth. Now, many of us Americans are upset with Joe Biden's administration for making such bold and generous promises to Ukraine. But there is a reason that is happening. I'm going to show you that reason tonight. Now, one reason that we're all upset is because America is practically bankrupt, groveling in debt. We cannot afford to be writing blank checks to other nations. I agree. And there is much to criticize about our government helping Ukraine. No argument there. But to say that America has no responsibility to help Ukraine is a sad miscalculation. There's a part of this story that I think many have forgotten. So, on the one side, yes, we don't have money to be sending to Ukraine. Absolutely. The way that absolutely. But there are two sides to this story, and you need to be taking notes now. Because I'm going to give you both sides, and I'm going to show you where this winds up, and I'm going to show you how Donald Trump is going to end this war on day one. And therefore, nuclear war will not start with Russia. It is coming, but not with Russia. And no, not with China either. Stay tuned. First of all, we need to remember some very important history. Tonight's a history lesson because you can't know the future till you know the history. First of all, we must acknowledge, as much as we hate to, a few things that Vladimir Putin has said that is correct. As much as we can't stand him, as much as he's a horrible person, there's some things he has said that is correct. When Putin ordered the war into Ukraine last year, in an address to his nation, he recalled before the whole world how NATO attacked Serbia in the 1990s and dismantled Yugoslavia. He basically said that the West cannot criticize what he's doing in Ukraine, since it was basically the same thing that NATO did in Yugoslavia. Now that goes all the way back to the 1990s. Now, even though his speech was filled with self-serving lies, he was right in condemning NATO's behavior. Yugoslavia was conquered by American military power. Under the banner of NATO, the United States blasted the Serbians to smithereens so that Kosovo and other states could break away from Serbia. It was a terrible attack against the Serbs. Now, here's the thing about the Serbians. They were our ally in World War I and World War II. Now, the world should be upset at what Vladimir Putin is doing, especially on Ukrainian hospitals. But you must remember what America and NATO did to 19 hospitals in Serbia in the early 1990s. Their patients tell horrible stories of rushing to bomb shelters while giving birth to babies. Now, of course, Russia is dramatically killing more people more quickly in Ukraine than NATO did in Serbia, but America is not innocent of some of the very same crimes that we see Vladimir Putin committing. But here is the most unexplainable part of it all. The United States conquered, destroyed, and conquered the Serbians on behalf of Germany. And who was our bitter enemy in both world wars? Was it not that leopard, Germany? I challenge you tonight to look honestly at the history that Putin is talking about and determine whether he is right on that one point. Why was America bombing a nation that was our ally in World War I, and World War I, and both World Wars? Why would we then give Yugoslavia and the entire Balkan Peninsula over to the very nation that started the two world wars and was our bitter enemy, Germany? Why would we hand Yugoslavia over to Germany? Do you know that Germany was the first country to see our weakness? Follow me carefully tonight. Vladimir Putin understands what Germany understands, that America has been weak in our foreign policy, and both nations are exploiting it. Now, the question is, why are we in Ukraine today? I'll be happy to tell you. One man. Anybody know the man's name? Barack Obama. Let me explain it to you. Even though America's intervention in the Balkans was a terrible mistake, Putin is justified in calling us out on it. However, does this mean now that because we made a mistake, that the U.S. should now just sit back and allow Putin to take over Ukraine? Well, here's the problem. Many of you have forgotten about something very important. The reason that we're in Ukraine today and we cannot get out. It's something called the Budapest Memorandum. The Budapest Memorandum. I'm going to show that to you in just a moment. In 1994, in the midst of the Yugoslavian war, Bill Clinton, Russian President Boris Yeltsin, and the leaders of the United Kingdom and Ukraine all signed something called the Budapest Memorandum. 4 nations, Bill Clinton, America, Russia, United Kingdom, and Ukraine. 4 nations went and signed a treaty. At the moment they signed that treaty, Ukraine had the world's 3rd largest, listen carefully, nuclear arsenal to protect themselves against who? Russia. Ukraine had the 3rd largest, think about that, nuclear arsenal in the world. That's a lot of power. But here comes Bill Clinton, Boris Yeltsin, Great Britain, and Ukraine, and they make an agreement with Kyiv to give up their nuclear status. They convinced Ukraine to give up their power, their nuclear power. And they signed an agreement with Ukraine that if you will do this, then America and Russia and the Ukraine and Great Britain will protect you if you're ever attacked by a foreign power. That was in 1994. And later, France joined that agreement. Now, what I want to do is show that agreement to you tonight. This is the United Nations website. It talks about the memorandum of the non-proliferation of nuclear weapons. And then, if you click here, it will bring you here, and let us read this agreement. So you're going to learn more here tonight. This is an agreement filed with the United Nations between these nations, guaranteeing Ukraine that if they are ever attacked, we would protect them. That agreement is still in effect to this very day. However, Barack Obama failed when Russia began to annex Crimea, and when they began to take on the nations right there on Ukraine's eastern border, Barack Obama showed weakness and did nothing. He failed to keep the agreement. He ignored America's promise and left Ukraine defenseless against Russia. If Barack Obama would have shown strength at that moment, we would not be in Ukraine today. If Barack Obama would have stood up and fought then for Ukraine and stopped Russia, we would not have this problem today. After telling Ukraine, give up your nuclear weapons and America will defend you, what did we do? We just allowed Russia to waltz in and annex all around it. And do you know what Barack Obama did? Gave them a verbal warning. That was it. Now, when this happened, it was a pivotal moment in foreign policy. When this happened, nations all over Europe saw it, especially Eastern Europe, and they trembled with fear. They realized they could not count on the United States for protection against Russia. After they gained their freedom from the Soviet Union, these nations trusted in America. Some of those nations became members of NATO, and then they watched Russian aggression again. And they hoped that America, under Barack Obama, would step up, be the strong man, and display our protection of them, defending them from aggression. But what did they see? That America has a broken will, that America is weak under sissy presidents. We were steps away, ladies and gentlemen, a week or two ago, from that sissy spirit culminating in the ruling of a woman. Weakness all over the world. Now, immediately, what does Europe begin to do? What do we do, they say, to protect ourselves from aggression? What do? We unite politically, militarily, and financially. The reason they're uniting, the reason for BRICS, the reason for all of that is Barack Obama's sissy, hidden gay self that was too weak to honor the memorandum that America signed. So, the European nations start looking for a protector now. And who do they go to? The Bible tells you so. They go to that leopard that's going to rise in the end time for a third time. Where do they go? They go to Germany to protect them. And what's so startling is Germany has terrorized Europe, all of its history. Nations like Poland that suffered so much at the Germans' hand, they've begun to fear Russia's aggression more than Germany's history. America's weakness and Europe's unification are both in Bible prophecy. Now, something weird happened when Joe Biden became president. Something very weird happened. Suddenly, Barack Obama, that was so anti-Ukraine, so weak in protecting them. We know that Joe Biden is the third presidency, if you will, of Barack Hussein. We know that. The second one. So why all of a sudden, if Barack was so weak, Biden so pro-Ukraine? Really? Well, allow me to explain it to you, if I may. If you'll remember, Joe Biden has been to Ukraine. Remember, he walked under falling bombs. You remember that? And yet we know he wouldn't do it if Obama didn't allow it. What's motivating this? Why all of a sudden now we're ready to be good and keep our promise to Ukraine? I'll be happy to explain it to you. Ready? Okay. That February 22nd, 2014, not long before Obama allowed Putin to annex the Crimean Peninsula, there was a movement that erupted in Ukraine, known as the Euromaidan movement. Now, these protests were fueled by the president's decision to abandon a trade agreement with the European Union and become closer to Russia. All right? Stay with me here. Wake up. I always take a risk when I go into deep subjects of losing people. But if you'll follow me, it'll all tie together for you tonight, okay? Here we are in Ukraine. And the president, Yanukovich, is ready to abandon European Union, which is what the Ukrainians wanted. And he wants to get closer to Russia. Now that decision was bad. It caused an uprising by the Ukrainians. And what did Yanukovych do? He flew to Russia to exile. And now being protected by Vladimir Putin. Now, the problem is when Yanukovych goes into exile, he was the president of Ukraine. What does that leave? A power vacuum. One of his biggest allies, Yanukovych, the president of Ukraine, one of his biggest allies that he left behind in Ukraine to face the music without presidential protection was someone by the name of Mykola Zlochevsky. Mykola Zlochevsky. Now, Mykola has no protection from Yanukovych. Now, who is Mykola? I'll be happy to tell you. He was a government official under President Yanukovych. He had all the protection he needed. But, are you ready? He was also the owner of Burisma Holdings, a major energy company in Ukraine. Well, he finds himself in a very scary position. He has no protection. And these oligarchs all around him, they're out for him. So his ties to the exiled president and Burisma's wealth made him a target for political rivals in Ukraine. So with Yanukovych no longer in power, he seeks protection from where? He hires a young man by the name of Hunter Biden. And this is Vice President Joe Biden's youngest son, gives him a position on the board, pays him $80,000 a month to protect him, to get Daddy Joe to come over there now that there's a power vacuum, and get him to fire prosecutors that are investigating. Come on now. Anybody awake now? Now, let me tell you a little bit more about Mr. Mykola. Mykola. You ready? It was Mykola that played a pivotal role in helping the Obama administration dig up dirt in 2020 on Donald Trump's campaign manager, Paul Manafort. Anything connecting for you now? In fact, it was Mykola that brought forth all of the information that created the Steele dossier and created Russiagate that may very well have influenced our 2020 election. Even German Chancellor Angela Merkel said that Ukraine was meddling in elections for Biden. Now, Ukraine is one of the world's most corrupt countries. But still, the Biden administration suddenly flooding money over there. Do you think it's because he's wanting to keep that treaty, even though Obama couldn't care less about it? No. It's payback time, so that nothing else can come out. Now, Bible prophecy tells us all of these things are going to happen. And I've come to tell you that America, under Democrat leadership, has become so weak in the world that without a strong leader, we've lost, or we've won our last war. The reason God raised up Donald Trump is to bring strength on the world stage back to America, to protect us from the plans of one nation, not Russia, not China, but Germany. Oh yes, little sleeping Germany started the First World War, started the second one, and it will be them that starts the third, because the prince of the power of the air that rules Germany has never changed. I'll prove to you that America has won her last war. After World War II, we've never won another war. Did you know that? After World War II, we've never won another war. The Korean War, the Bay of Pigs, the Vietnam spectacle, the embarrassing Iran hostage crisis, Grenada, Libya, and Lebanon in the 1980s, the 91 Gulf War. Oh, you think we won that war? No, I'll prove to you in a minute we didn't. The war on terror, still not won until Donald Trump came to office. America has won its last war without strength coming back to our nation. Now, many leaders think World War III is about to begin now with Russia. I assure you it's not. Why do I assure you of that? Because I know who's going to start the next world war. It's not Russia or China. We've sacrificed 7,000 soldiers and $3 trillion in Iraq and Afghanistan. I could go on and on and on and on. Europe is uniting behind Germany right now and its new leader. Do not be distracted by Russia or China. The leopard is rising silently. Europe is uniting. Slowly but surely, they are uniting. Now, many prophecies show that nuclear war is coming. But those powers, ladies and gentlemen, are coming from from Germany. Now, I believe that Germany has given Ukraine already to Russia. Big statement, I know. Let me explain. The entire Western world has condemned Russia for attacking Ukraine, except for Germany. Germany has been conspicuously quiet. The world has been puzzled at how little Germany has done to help Ukraine against Russian attack. Now, this is very similar to what happened in the Yugoslavic wars. The Serbs and Yugoslavia were allied with the Soviet Union for years. And then Russia did nothing to protect the Serbians from Germany. Did Russia and Germany have a deal way back then? We give you the Serbs, you give us Ukraine. Did Russia fail to aid the Serbians as Germany is failing to aid the Ukrainians because a deal was made? Germany's been very cozy with Russia in recent years. Matter of fact, one of its former chancellors in Germany worked for Vladimir Putin for many years. We need to remember, if you think that's crazy, you need to remember Germany and Russia made a secret deal before World War II began. Both countries attacked Poland and then shared control of that country. They made a deal. Russia agreed not to interfere with Germany's attack against the West. So don't be naive. I believe that Germany, not America, is in control of the Balkans. The Ukraine conflict will bring forth what the Bible calls the kings of the East closer together. The reason the Ukraine conflict is happening now is to bring together the kings of the East, to prepare them for their role. You see, before this, Russia and China were not close. They were not allied. Ukraine is driving them together. Why? Because according to Bible prophecy, they play a pivotal role in making and being in this third world war. But they must come together. Ukraine is pushing them together. How will Donald Trump stop this war? How? On day one. How will he do it? Ladies and gentlemen, I know how he will do it. He will threaten Vladimir Putin to enforce the Budapest Manifesto or Memorandum that demands that the United States destroy Russia for aggressively attacking Ukraine. He will have the legal documents authorizing him to obliterate Russia. He will pull out the the one you've never heard about, the Budapest Memorandum the whole world has forgotten about. I believe Donald Trump knows that Budapest Memorandum is waiting for him to make America great again. That's how he will end the Ukraine war. He will show strength. He will remind them we have an agreement to defend Ukraine with all of our resources. We will, and we can obliterate Russia like that. They know it. They know it. That is what will cause him to back down, in my ever so humble opinion. So, there you go, ladies and gentlemen. So sorry that I had to go so deep with that. Let's see what some folks are saying. Teresa Geschwinder, you are correct. Germany appears to be under the radar and very sanguine. You're exactly right. And Tina Shaflett, you're exactly right. Suddenly, Germany is building an army. You're exactly right.